We have some wonderful visitors from Pennsylvania. Yeah, we're not the only ones who do evergreen in the United States of America or worldwide, as Haley tells you. So we're going to hear from another consortium in Pennsylvania. And they go by the strange name of PaILS, PaILS. But they go by PaILS, and they call their catalog Spark, which is also very cool. So I want to introduce you to a couple of my friends. Katie Greenleaf Martin and her crew is going to take this away and tell us all about Spark. I want you to hold your questions to the end because I know you're going to have a lot about how other folks.
Thank you so much, Mickey. I will try to run through my slides pretty quickly so that we can hang out and talk for a little while. And let's see. So I will just start by telling you that I am Katie Greenleaf Martin, and I'm the executive director of the Pennsylvania Integrated Library Service. So it was either PILS or PaILS, and we went with PaILS. And Kat Donnell, my membership engagement specialist, is here with me today as well. And we have a third employee. Her name is Elizabeth Davis, and she is attending the Evergreen Community Development Initiative meeting for us today. So she's handling that side of it while we're here. I have been working with Evergreen Libraries for about 10 years in both South Carolina and Pennsylvania, but I am actually a Midwesterner at heart. I was born in Wichita. My father's family is from Southeast Kansas, and my grandmother was born in Maryville and grew up in Sedalia. So I am happy to have Missouri connections and was really pleased when Mickey asked if I could come chat with you all. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about our consortium. I'll talk less about Evergreen than I usually do and more about some of the things that may be different between the way that our consortium works in Pennsylvania and the way that you all are structured in Missouri. And then I'm going to run through some of the current things that we are doing, things that we think have benefit to not just our member libraries, but also non-member libraries in Pennsylvania, really leveraging our resources to improve library services across Pennsylvania, and also to other members of Evergreen Consortia in places besides Pennsylvania. So I'm gonna kind of run through all of that here. So we, the Pennsylvania Integrated Library System Consortium is our full official name, was founded in 2011. And we initially had, when we were founded at that time, we had a part-time executive director. And now 12 years later, we have 3 full-time employees. We have never had a physical office. We have had people work out of member libraries and compensated member libraries for their space. And we've had people work from home. I'm fortunate right now to have the 3 of us pretty well distributed across the state, which is great for doing library visits. But we don't maintain a physical office. We're a 501c3, and we have a 9-member board of directors, and that board is made up of primarily librarians, some from member libraries, some from other Pennsylvania libraries, and a couple of non-librarian members as well, people who are passionate about libraries and involved in the industry in some way, but don't themselves work as librarians. Spark is not an acronym. It is the branding that was developed for our consortium early on. In Pennsylvania, our statewide databases and statewide ILL catalog are called Power Library. So it was designed to be consistent with that branding. And so you'll hear us talk about Spark. Often when our members talk about Evergreen, they talk about Spark because it's how we usually talk about it. Whether we're talking about the group of libraries or we're talking about the software itself. And we had almost 6 million circulations in the last calendar year. You guys know a lot about Evergreen already, and our hosting is currently provided by Equinox. Let's see, there we go. I wanted to show you our libraries, and I hope this isn't too terribly small for those of you who are in person, but we are statewide in the sense that we touch all the corners of the state, all the sides of the state, and we have both We have independent libraries. Sometimes they're members of a system, sometimes they're independent. We have full, what we call in Pennsylvania, federated systems, which are systems where the libraries are independent organizations, but they're members of a system. And we also have consolidated systems, which are libraries with branches. And we have a couple of school libraries, as well as a number of what we would call special libraries. Most of ours are historical societies. And so that is kind of the composition of our consortium, as well as how we're distributed throughout the state. So you can see that we have a number of pockets where, you know, in the northeastern part of the state, we have pretty much all of the libraries, and we have some pretty good swaths throughout the central part of the state as well. One of the things about our consortium, which is somewhat unusual, is that we don't have consortium-wide resource sharing. We have overlapping and connecting relationships of resource sharing throughout our consortium, and I'll talk a little bit about it more. And so you'll see that the libraries that tend to join us tend to be bordering on other libraries that are already members, so that they can then share materials with their neighboring libraries. When we talk about our consortium, we talk about the advantages of our consortium. We talk about Evergreen as an advantage. Obviously, it's a project that was designed for public libraries by public librarians. When you look at the history of the creation of Evergreen by the Georgia Public Library Service, we are really proud of our customer support. That's our big focus, is that we want to be able to, you know, our members come to us with a goal, with an outcome. We want to be fine free. We want to share materials. We want to improve the visibility of certain parts of our collection. And we work with them to do that, as well as handling the day-to-day stuff and troubleshooting and all those things that support desks need to do. And we're dedicated to, in our case, Pennsylvania, public libraries and library systems. You know, we're fortunate to have significant grant funding from through our Office of Commonwealth Libraries, which is the home of the state library in Pennsylvania. But ultimately, it goes back to the Library Service and Technology Act funds administered by the Institute for Museum and Library Services. So, you know, we work closely with the state library, with the staff at the state library, as well as with the other statewide service providers in the state. One that we work with really significantly, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, is our interlibrary loan partner for the statewide interlibrary loans system. One of the things that I love to talk about is that for me, it's about starting with why. Why, you know, why are we worthy of grant funding? What is the purpose of our project? Why are we doing this? And for me, it goes back to improving library service for the residents of the library's service areas that we work with. And so, you know, we provide training, we provide support for initiatives, we provide a lot of information and encouragement about best practices, as well as sponsoring development that is all in the service of ultimately helping people use libraries. So because we don't have consortium-wide resource sharing in our consortium, one of the things that we are spending a lot of time on is to help libraries move from not sharing materials to sharing materials. In Pennsylvania, public libraries are organized into districts. There are 29 library districts across Pennsylvania's 67, 68 counties. Don't quote me on that one. And so we have been working with the areas where we have all the libraries in a district to help them move materials around. And so we're right now going through a process with two of our library districts, one called the Northeast District, which is 5 counties in the northeastern corner of the state, and one called the Easton District, which is the area around Easton, Pennsylvania, as well as another county. to help them move materials around between their libraries. So we take libraries through a process where we talk with them about how are you going to handle fines, overdue fees, lost fees, damaged books? Who is responsible for funding the delivery arrangements, and how will materials get moved around? And then we have a chart that they fill it out, which in our case, has the circulation modifiers on the one side and the profile groups on the other side. And they say, what they want to share and how many holds they want to allow in each combination there. And so that really gives us a way to then build the policies that are very clearly based on what the libraries want to do. And we have a lot of success with that. We're rolling out a number of arrangements right now. But it also means that because these groups overlay and are interwoven and overlapping, we've sponsored some development to help us be able to have patrons be able to search those collections all at the same time when they're unrelated libraries. So it's been an interesting journey and continues to be. I say that we're going to get to statewide resource sharing, but we're going to do it one county at a time. And so we're well into that long process, and we look forward to continuing that. Sometimes we are very jealous of consortia that have already these agreements that people agree to resource share when they come into the consortium, which I believe is what you all have in Missouri. This is, again, we sort of try to both make the software do what we want it to do, sometimes by sponsoring development, as well as helping the libraries understand what the software can and can't do, and working within those limits to be able to create successful agreements. This is a fun little case study. It's in my part of the state, South Central Pennsylvania. 2 counties that are next to each other. They are not members of the same district or system. And it just happens that the existing delivery route of the Bedford libraries goes very close to the Somerset County Library. And so they said, why don't we share things? It's not a problem to set up. And we have the resources in terms of it's not going to be a huge additional expense. So for the Somerset County libraries, this will be their first outside of county resource sharing, whereas Bedford also shares with the other 2 counties in its library district. So we're able to use these kind of overlapping arrangements to utilize whatever resources libraries have. We have deliveries run by school districts in some case. We have lots of library run deliveries, and we also do have a number of libraries that just ship things around the state. So it really lets us be flexible and work with the libraries in the ways that make sense for them. Something else that we're working on right now, in Pennsylvania, a previous governor had put forth an executive order encouraging a number of state departments to provide pathways to voter registration through their various services. So in Pennsylvania, we already had what are called motor voter laws, which allow you to update or create your voter registration as part of any transaction that you do with the Department of Motor Vehicles. And so the state is working on expanding that same kind of access out. So if you apply for certain types of unemployment assistance or other types of benefits, I think WIC, when you use the state portal to apply to these things, it's then going to also connect and say, do you want to update your voter registration? For state-run applications, they can actually then pull that data over and pre-populate the existing name and address data. We're going with a little bit more low-tech solution because we are a statewide nonprofit as opposed to a department of government. And we use the surveys feature in Evergreen to prompt staff to ask patrons who are signing up for or renewing their library card if they're interested in creating or updating their voter registration. So that's a transaction that happens face-to-face with library staff. And so it gives the library staff that reminder to go ahead and check with people, especially people who are new to the area or just moved, have a new address within the area, to go ahead and update that voter registration. In addition, because we have many libraries that make heavy use of the online card application feature, we just tested this out with a few counties this spring, and so we're getting ready to move it on to other libraries who are interested in doing it. But upon registering, upon filling out that library card registration, it then actually gives you that button to take you directly over to the voter registration website. It doesn't pull in the data, and we don't right now have the ability to, one of the things that our Pennsylvania's Department of State is working on is being able to get us links that are specific to the individual libraries, so that they could then provide us data on, okay, this many people clicked through, and of those, there were this many that completed their voter registration. So it's still a work in process, but it's something that we're really pleased to be able to support statewide, and something that I think really adds another option for libraries in terms of providing support for civic engagement in their communities. Something else that we're doing, I mentioned earlier that we work with Hosting Solutions and Library Consulting, the statewide group that provides the statewide interlibrary loan infrastructure. And currently their vendor for that is Autographics. They use a product called Share It from Autographics, which is an interlibrary loan product. And one of the things that is difficult is connecting, the different catalogs and the different holdings. So we had been doing quarterly uploads of the entire Spark database, exporting the MARC file of all our, I think it's around 2 million bibs, and with all the holdings for all of our 4 million holdings, and uploading them once every quarter to completely update those holdings. So we were able to work with them to move so that we have outward facing Z3950 service that includes that availability information. And so our catalog can be directly searched through the statewide ILL catalog. This allows you to see, what we have today, not what a library owned or didn't own 3 months ago. And it allows the requests to move faster, because if an item is checked out, it knows that already and can skip over that and go to the next library. It only forwards the request on if the item is listed as available. So it's a time saver for our interlibrary loan staff, because they're not having to do that second step of checking the status in the catalog. And it also provides just better information for libraries that are looking to place requests on our items. What's coming up next is, oh, no, sorry, that's the next thing, which I will talk about in a minute. What's coming up next is to have the two systems, Evergreen and Share It, actually talk to each other, so that when the request is placed via Share It, then it actually goes in and puts a hold on the item for the specific patron. So we're really excited about it. We're just still working out kind of the kinks and looking at the workflow parts of it. But we're thrilled to be able to offer that. It is going to dramatically expand access for our interlibrary loan librarians. It's going to really reduce the amount of time, the number of times they need to touch things, the number of times they need to update something twice. And then for all of our libraries statewide, we represent, depending on how you look at branches versus independent libraries, between 1/4 and 1/3 of the public libraries in Pennsylvania. So for all those libraries that are wanting to borrow materials from our libraries, then it's increasing that request fill speed, because there's just fewer steps in the process. So we're very thrilled about that, and it'll be an interesting rollout, but we're really looking forward to it. The other thing that we just wrapped up, and I know you all have just wrapped this up too, is the annual data collection for the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And, you know, we all know how near and dear the Evergreen Reporter is to our hearts. And so one of the things that Elizabeth Davis, my support manager, really took on was to be able to provide people with templates for each question, as well as step-by-step instructions. So we really provided, you know, extra support for our libraries in collecting that data, making sure that the definitions provided by our state library were consistent with the reports that we were suggesting to them, and so on. And we did a live demo, and then we did some office hours and some one-on-one appointments as well. So we know that the annual report time is a hard time of year for all of our libraries, and so really working hard to support them in that. We have a users group, not unlike your users group, and we will have an online meeting in May. We do some regional events throughout the state that are in person, and then we're doing an online event in May. And like you all, we have a range of topics. When we used to do them at a central point in the state in person, it would be a similar setup to what you all have now, where we have conference sessions and we move through them. Because we're doing it all virtually now, we've moved to a sort of, I call it a distributed users group meeting approach. And so there's committee events, giveaways, and some consortium wide events all throughout the first 2 weeks of May. So we get to kind of spread it out a little bit and do things at different times. We've worked with other groups. We're working with Literacy Nation this year. And we've had a range of other presenters. So we always look forward to that, and are always excited to get everyone together. One of the things that I wanted to mention, which is kind of a bigger question, is, you know, where is PaILS headed? What's the future of the consortium? So for us, our strategic plan is focused around 3 areas. And the first of those areas is building organizational capacity. So, you know, right now we are 3 full-time staff members. 2 years ago, we were only 2 full-time staff members. So as we've increased the size of our membership base, we've also increased our staff size to be able to support those members. And we need to continue considering, you know, how do we do that? How do we provide sustainability of the finances, right? It's this balancing act between our member fees and our grant income, of our presence in the state, and how we interact with the other statewide agencies, how we collaborate with the state library, and really, you know, thinking about what is the core focus of our organization and how can we make sure that we have the capacity to fulfill that. Collaboration is the second of our strategic plan focuses, and that really has to do with, again, the other statewide providers. For me, it also has to do with communicating how our consortium is valuable, obviously, to our members, but also in terms of encouraging best practices and creating innovative ways to do things statewide. So the interlibrary loan integrations that we are piloting with our consortium and the statewide ILL program, then other library groups and consortia can then also, you know, participate in those programs, and it allows us to really encourage best practices statewide. And collaboration is necessary for us to be able to do that. And then the third part is the community, you know, to continue to grow our membership, add, you know, library systems that are going to bring a lot to the consortium, and that are going to help us, you know, continue working statewide to have a, you know, a more robust, more resource sharing oriented approach to library service. So we're really excited about it. Okay, so that is my whole talk. I can bring this back up later. The slides are on the the PDF for the slides is in the website for the meeting. So if anyone wants to grab our contact information, please feel free. And then I will turn this off so that we can all chat.
Thank you, Katie. That was a marvelous presentation and very eye-opening. I think it's a good idea to see if we have questions from the group here in person, and I'll also be looking at the chat to see if anyone has questions.
Maybe. So they are a consortium because they have the same ILS, but they don't do research thing.
Correct. It's a little odd for people who are used to having resource sharing be part of the definition of a consortium. It's a little bit of a shift, and you know, I will say that because in Pennsylvania we really value local control. And so when as an example, when I moved back home to central Pennsylvania after working in other states for about 10 years, I went into the library that's a couple miles from my house. And if I wanted a book that was in the system headquarters library 4 miles away, I could either drive there and register for a new library card, or I could place an interlibrary loan request. They were not using the same ILS and they were not sharing things together. So a big part of the original mandate when our consortium was developed was to help especially smaller libraries and more rural systems be able to operate themselves as library systems and as little mini consortia, and then grow out from there. We do share, we share the bibliographic database, obviously, and because we're all in the same installation, but we don't have consortium-wide movement of materials.
I think a lot of us might be confused because, well, not confused, interested, because we're so surrounded by one of our key things is the resource sharing. That's how we draw people.
Number one.
And yeah, like Nikki just said, that's the number one thing we do. So it is super intriguing and interesting to see. I mean, I even heard some talking around me, like, what's the advantage of being in a consortium if you're not,
Research.
you know, resource sharing, the whole thing, everybody's resource sharing. And hi, Katie, it's Kate.
Hi, Kate, how are you? So it is different, and it does. So even though we don't like when libraries come in, we don't mandate that they share with their neighbors. It does give them the ability to do that. Whereas if you're on even separate installations of the same ILS, you don't have the ability to do that. So, you know, it's kind of a coalition of the willing, right? We do have libraries that essentially accept, you know, anybody that wants to have a relationship with them, and they ship materials around the state. But it is, you know, in Pennsylvania, it's a very kind of gradual process to have libraries consider, you know, sharing of materials outside of their normal borders. And, you know, I worked with an SC Lens library, and I've worked with libraries in other states, and it is very different in terms of the sort of attitude around sharing materials. Yeah.
I have one follow-up question. So does that mean when a library joins PaILS that they kind of have the choice between two catalogs, like one that that's their own, and then one that they can like share easily with one another? Or
so we're all on one Evergreen installation. Everybody is on the same bibliographic database.
on the staff side, everybody, they can see everybody that's in the consortium. They can see all of their items, but they can't
Borrow.
do anything. They can't borrow.
Right.
Yeah.
So these for that, well, I'm going to compare that to what we were the last lone survivors of the group listed. Remember that? You remember Listen? Anybody
Yeah.
old enough to understand Listen? And that was consortium that was just, they shared the expense of the consortium, but they didn't share items. So I mean, that's a big difference here with Missouri Evergreen. We are, that's one of our biggest advantage and one of our biggest drawing points is the fact that I want a book from Cape Girardeau. I see it in that catalog and I know with 2 clicks of my mouse, I could place that hold and within 2 weeks or so, it's gonna be at my local library.
Right. So
And-
something that's interesting is that our libraries that do resource share, it's typically 3 or 4 days. So, you know, we have some libraries that only have once a week delivery, but we encourage libraries to add at least a second delivery, so that for in-system requests, it's no more than a week for delivery of items. And then our non-contiguous libraries that share things that ship, it's typically 3 or 4 days. So it does, because it's we're using whatever existing delivery arrangements people have, we can move things pretty fast, which is great. And it's interesting to me. So like, I hear you all saying like, this is our biggest selling point. This is people want to join because we have consortium wide resource sharing. I have to deal so frequently with that preconception. People say, well, I'm not willing to share things statewide, so I can't join. And so I have the opposite, which is that I'm baby stepping libraries towards sharing more things.
Well, I'm all the accolades to the Missouri State Library for funding the courier system.
Yes.
Or the state courier system to make that possible for us. The other thing, kind of take a pivot here, I noticed your van. So is it each individual library that has their own vans that want to do the resource sharing and that's their responsibility?
Yes, it is each library. We have libraries that use vans. We have libraries that do, we have these things in Pennsylvania called intermediate units, which are collections of school districts. So we have libraries that contract with these school district affiliated organizations to do delivery because the libraries are often near the schools. And we have libraries that rely solely on commercial shipping partners.
So your consortium doesn't own vehicles.
No.
It's the library that does want to resource share provides their own vehicle.
Yes, however they want to move the materials around is up to them, and they bear the cost and the logistical part of that.
Okay, thank you for that.
I have some questions. So your consortium, can see everybody's catalog. So if I say, that I am from, some other place and I want that book, I do it, traditional interlibrary loan through OCLC. And that's how you kind of go back and forth with items.
So we have the statewide, one of the advantages that we do have is that we have this very robust statewide interlibrary loan that includes public libraries, school district libraries, and academic libraries, many of the like smaller academic institutions in Pennsylvania. So we have several members, but fewer than a half dozen that participate in OCLC's World Share, and then all of our members, in a theoretical sense, participate in the statewide interlibrary loan. And so that's why one of our focuses is really helping those two systems work together. Because yes, that would be how you would do it, is you would say, oh, okay, well, there is a holding at another library. So I know that when I go over to share it, then I'll be able to place that request. And then you can also see, through share it, then you're also seeing Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, Free Library of Philadelphia, the University of Pittsburgh, like you're seeing a much bigger scope.
They
And
have
then
The OCLC essentially.
It's a big one. It's a big overlay. It's another catalog.
Yeah.
So here's a question, you said that you wanted, are you talking about your OCLC? Or the OCLC, worldwide that you want, combined?
So the statewide interlibrary loan, which is not run through OCLC, is the one that we're working on integrating with. And then for our members that are OCLC customers, then we also work with them to do some integrations with OCLC, both for their cataloging and for the ILL discovery. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? We did get a question in the chat that I want to read. It said, what is the range of population largest to smallest served by PaILS?
So our smallest library service areas, Kat, I think are 1,000 in the realm of 1,000 to 2,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then our largest service areas are, what is York
County, which is about 460,000 people, and Lackawanna County, which is a fraction of that, but still one of the larger counties. So
Yeah.
it ranges a lot.
So we have over 1 million patron records, and we did the math that approximately 10% of Pennsylvanians have at least at some point had a library card at a Spark library. And so because sometimes we have full systems, so we have all the libraries in York County, sometimes we're representing, like almost 500,000 people at once. And then some of the smaller libraries, they may be our municipal structure is also strange, but it might be one small town, one borough and one township.
Yes, go ahead.
Reciprocal borrowing be a thing, like, because we've talked about that in our consortium with going from one library and having like 2 or 3 more library cards. So is that an issue? Like you guys have like
One card at all
one
PaILS
card
libraries?
for the ones that are sharing, or do you have to have different cards for each of those that you want to be a part of?
So it depends. Most of our systems have one card, and so you can then use any library in that say county with that one card. But then if you go to the next county over, even though it's still a Spark library, you would need to get an additional card. It partially has to do with in Pennsylvania how we count library patrons and how we assign service areas and how we calculate how our funding formulas work. We don't have any multi-county one card areas. There is one it's not a Spark consortium, but I just went and visited them this week. In the southwestern corner of the state, there's 3 counties where it's one card and you can use it at any of the libraries. Again, when I moved back here, they had the physical card was one card, but you had to go around to the different libraries in the county and they'd put another barcode sticker on it.
Wow.
So we encourage libraries who are in systems together to share cards. And what we're working with some libraries now is because of the way it's supposed to be that if you have a card at a library in Pennsylvania that is that receives local funding, then you should be able to go take that library card to any library in Pennsylvania and then get that reciprocal borrowing card, like an additional card. And so we've actually worked with some libraries because they get they get residents from neighboring municipalities. So we've worked with them to have then permissions for that neighboring library. So the person walks in and they get first issued a card for their home library, the library where their service area is, and then immediately after that get issued a card for the library that they're standing in. And yes, it is as crazy as it sounds.
We
But it,
feel
you know,
your pain, we feel your pain. We do the same in a very
Every-
similar fashion, so.
every
Well,
state
we
has
are
its
out
own.
of time, I'm sorry to say. We have a session that needs to start in a few minutes, but this has been endlessly fascinating to hear another perspective on how we do library work. And so I can't thank you enough, Katie and Kat. Thanks for sharing your story. And, let's do this again. This was fantastic.
Was delightful. Thank you all for spending some time with me. I hope you have a wonderful
Yeah.
rest of your day.